The first slap didn't even sting. It was the sound that hurt, the sharp crack echoing across the living room, cutting through the low hum of the television and the faint scent of rosemary chicken still cooling on the counter. My son's hand had left a red print on my cheek, and for a moment, I couldn't tell whether the heat burning through my skin came from his palm or from shame. 20, right? His wife's voice floated from the couch, smooth and cold. You said you'd teach her a lesson once and for all. I blinked hard, but I didn't move. My son, my Daniel, stood over me with eyes I didn't recognize. Those eyes used to beg me to check for monsters under his bed. Now they burned with something else, pride maybe, or the desperate need to prove he wasn't the boy I raised. He raised his hand again. The second slap was harder. And this time, I tasted blood. I told you to stay out of our marriage, Mom, he said, his voice trembling with controlled rage. You don't get to walk in here and insult my wife. I didn't insult her, I whispered, though my lips felt swollen. I just said I missed seeing you at Sunday dinner. Liar, his wife, Emily, snapped. She crossed her legs, her silver anklet flashing in the lamplight. You told me I turned him against his own family. You said I poisoned him. That's what you said. I never. The third slap silenced me. He hit me 20 times that night. I counted. I counted because I wanted to remember exactly how much of my love he destroyed before I stopped being his mother and started being something else, something still breathing but hollowed out. When he finally lowered his hand, I was standing but barely. Emily smirked and said, now maybe she'll finally understand boundaries. Daniel turned away, his chest heaving, avoiding my eyes. You shouldn't have come here, Mom. You're just making things worse. The taste of iron filled my mouth. I swallowed it with the words I wanted to scream. Instead, I looked at him the way I used to when he was little and hurt himself on the playground, gently, patiently, with love that wouldn't die even when it should. You're right, I said quietly. I shouldn't have come. I left without my coat. The December air outside hit like punishment, but it was honest, at least. Cold doesn't lie. Driving home, my hands trembled on the steering wheel. Every stoplight blurred into the next. I kept replaying the moment he struck me, the look in his eyes, the way Emily's lips curved in satisfaction, the faint laughter from the television that didn't stop even while my son's palm broke my heart. I had raised that boy alone. His father, Mark, died when Daniel was 10, heart attack on a construction site. I remember the funeral like it was yesterday. Daniel clung to my skirt and sobbed until he hiccuped. I promised him then, you'll never be alone, Danny. Not once. And I meant it. I took a second job at the diner. I sold my wedding ring to pay for his first semester at college. I lied to bill collectors, begged landlords for extensions, slept 4 hours a night for 12 years just to keep his dreams alive. And now, that same boy had stood in front of me with his wife's approval and turned his hand into a weapon. I parked outside my little house, the one with the faded blue shutters Daniel used to paint every summer. I sat there for almost an hour before I could move. The porch light flickered, and the wind carried the sound of the chimes I'd hung for him when he was 13. He used to say they sounded like heaven whispering secrets. That night, heaven was silent. When I finally stepped inside, the quiet felt heavier than the bruises. I walked straight to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and stared at my reflection in the window. My face looked foreign, swollen cheek, tear-streaked eyes, blood dried along the corner of my lip. Behind that reflection, I could almost see Mark's ghost shaking his head. What did I do wrong? I whispered. Where did I lose him? No answer. Just the ticking of the clock above the stove. For 3 days, I didn't leave the house. The phone rang, but I didn't pick up. Neighbors knocked, but I didn't answer. I lived inside that silence, letting the pain rot into something quieter, darker, colder. On the 4th day, a small envelope appeared in my mailbox. No name, no return address, just my street number written in Daniel's messy handwriting. Inside, a folded note. Mom, I'm sorry about the other night. But you have to stop interfering. Emily thinks you're trying to turn me against her. Please don't come by again. I'll visit when things settle down. No apology for the slaps. No regret. Just instructions. I burned the letter in my sink. Watched the paper curl and blacken, watched the smoke rise and disappear like every promise he'd ever made. That night, I dreamed of Mark again. He was sitting at our old kitchen table, tapping his wedding ring against the wood. "You did your best, Mary," he said. "But you can't keep saving him. Sometimes love turns into chains." I woke up before dawn, my chest tight with something I hadn't felt in years, resolve. The next morning, I drove to the church at the edge of town. Father Jenkins had known our family for decades. When he saw me, his eyes softened. "Mary, you look tired." I smiled faintly. "I've had a long week." We talked for a while, and I told him everything. Every slap. Every word. Every humiliation. He listened quietly, his hands folded. When I finished, he said only, "Sometimes, God lets us lose what we love most so we can see what we've become without it." I nodded, though I didn't understand. "Not yet." Before I left, he handed me a small wooden cross. "Keep this," he said. "When you're ready, you'll know what to do." Driving home, I thought about what he meant. What could I do? He was my son. You don't get revenge on your child. You don't fight back with fists or anger. But you can still stand up. You can still make them see the truth, whether they want to or not. By evening, I found myself standing outside Daniel's house again. I wasn't planning to knock. I just wanted to see the lights, to remind myself that he was real, that it hadn't all been a nightmare. But then I noticed something. His car wasn't there. Emily's wasn't either. The curtains were open. Inside, the dining table was covered in documents, bank papers, property deeds, and something that looked like my signature. My breath caught. I stepped closer to the window. It was my house deed. My name, my address. And beside it, transfer forms. Someone had forged my signature. A sudden chill raced down my spine. They weren't just done with me emotionally. They were erasing me. A motion light flicked on, flooding the yard. I ducked behind a hedge, heart pounding. Then I heard the faint sound of a car pulling up, their voices, laughing. Emily's laughter, sharp and high-pitched. Daniel's low mumble. I backed away, my pulse thundering. I didn't know what scared me more, the betrayal written on those papers or the calmness settling in my chest as I whispered to myself, "So this is how far they'll go." I drove home in silence. No tears this time. No shaking. Just a deep, cold stillness spreading through me like something ancient waking up. When I got home, I set the wooden cross on the table, lit a candle beside it, and whispered, "You wanted to teach me a lesson, Daniel. Let's see what you learn instead." The candlelight flickered once, then steadied, like an answer. And somewhere deep inside, for the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. Just before the first knock came at the door. It was gentle. Too gentle. And when I opened the door, I expected Daniel. I don't know why, maybe because my heart still wanted to believe he had remembered who I was. But it wasn't him. It was a man in a gray suit, holding a clipboard and a sympathetic smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mrs. Walker?" he asked. "Yes. I'm with Crescent Realty. We're here for the property assessment. Your son, Daniel Walker, requested the paperwork be expedited." I stared at him. "Assessment? For what?" He glanced at his clipboard. "Says here, ownership transfer authorization. Looks like the house is being listed for market preparation." My stomach turned to ice. "That's impossible. This is my house." He shrugged. "I'm just here to take photos, ma'am." He tried to step past me. I blocked the doorway, my voice trembling but steady. "You can't come in." He hesitated, looked uncomfortable. "Look, Mrs. Walker, I'm just following instructions. The documentation looks legitimate." I felt the pulse in my temples. "Get off my porch before I call the police." He blinked, then backed away, muttering an apology. His car tires crunched against the gravel as he drove off, leaving me in the doorway with the cold wind and the echo of betrayal still humming through my ears. Daniel hadn't just hit me. He decided to erase me, completely. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch with the cross Father Jenkins gave me resting on my lap, staring at the front door as though it might breathe. The fear that had filled me for days began to harden into something different, clarity. The next morning, I called my friend Susan. She'd been my neighbor for 20 years, the kind of woman who could make a pie and expose a lie in the same hour. She gasped when she saw my face. "Oh honey. What did he do to you?" I told her everything. Every slap. Every word. Every piece of forged paper. Her jaw tightened. "He can't just take your house. Not legally." "I saw the documents, Susan." "Then we're getting a lawyer." She drove me to a small firm downtown. The office smelled of old paper and coffee, and the lawyer, a young woman named Rachel Miller, listened carefully, her eyes darkening as she read the copies I had managed to print from Daniel's emails years ago when he asked for my signature for his college forms. The handwriting matched. "These documents are forged," Rachel said firmly. "Your son and his wife may have scanned your old signature and replicated it. It's fraud." The words sounded heavy, final. "What happens now?" I asked. "We'll file a notice of dispute. That'll freeze any sale until ownership is verified. But we need evidence, emails, witnesses, maybe handwriting verification." "And Mary," she hesitated, her tone softening, "do you really want to go to court against your son?" The question hit harder than any slap. I looked at my bruised reflection in her office window and said quietly, "I didn't want any of this. But he started it." Rachel nodded. "Then we'll finish it, properly." On the drive home, Susan squeezed my hand. "You're stronger than you think, Mary." I tried to smile, but my thoughts kept circling back to Daniel's face that night, the way he couldn't meet my eyes after the last slap. Somewhere deep down, I still wanted to believe that part of him felt shame. But hope, I was learning, is just another way to hurt yourself slowly. That evening, I checked my voicemail. There was a message, from Emily. Her voice was calm, rehearsed. "Mary, I heard you talk to a lawyer. That's not smart. Daniel's already under enough stress with his job, and this isn't helping. Maybe it's time you stopped clinging to the past. If you make this ugly, it'll only hurt him more. You don't want to be the reason he breaks down, do you?" I replayed that message 3 times. Every word was poison wrapped in pity. I didn't respond. Instead, I wrote everything down, dates, times, words. Father Jenkins had told me once that truth doesn't need shouting, it just needs witnesses. So I began building my own gospel of betrayal. By the end of the week, Rachel called. "Mary, you might want to sit down. I found something." She explained that Daniel and Emily had taken out a small business loan 2 months earlier, using my house as collateral. The loan was already in default. If the bank realized the signatures were forged, Daniel could face serious charges. "He's drowning," Rachel said. "And they're trying to use your house to keep their heads above water." I sat in silence, the receiver pressed to my ear. My son wasn't just cruel, he was desperate. That night, I prayed. Not the kind of prayer you say to feel better, but the kind that tears through you, demanding an answer. I asked God if I was doing the right thing. I asked if love could ever mean letting your child fall. And then, somewhere between the quiet and the ache, I heard Mark's voice in my mind again. Sometimes, love is not saving them. It's letting the truth burn until it purifies what's left. The next morning, I received a text from Daniel. "Can we talk? Just us. Tonight. 7 p.m. For a moment, I wanted to delete it. But curiosity, or maybe love, won. I went. He met me at a small cafe near the river, wearing a suit that didn't fit right and an expression that almost passed for remorse. "Mom," he began, "I messed up." I said nothing. He rubbed his forehead. "Emily," she pushed me. She said the only way we could start over was if we sold everything. I didn't think she'd actually go through with the papers. "You signed them," I said. He flinched. "I was drunk, okay? I thought it was a business deal. I never meant for you to lose the house." I leaned forward. "Then why 20 times, Daniel? Why did you hit me?" His face tightened. He looked away. "Because she said I was still your boy. That I'd never be a real man while you were around. I wanted to prove her wrong." I felt my throat close. "She made you believe strength meant cruelty," I said softly. "And you listened." He didn't deny it. "Please, Mom," he whispered. "Don't take this to court. I'll fix it. I'll make it right." But I saw it then, the flicker of manipulation, the same one Emily used. He wasn't sorry. He was afraid. I stood up, dropped a few bills on the table, and said, I raised you to tell the truth. If you still know how, do it, before I do it for you." I walked out. 2 days later, my lawyer called again. "Mary, the bank's legal team reached out. They've confirmed the signatures on the loan documents are forged. They'll be contacting Daniel directly." Relief mixed with grief like oil in water. I should have felt victorious, but instead I felt hollow. That evening, Susan came over with soup and gossip, but I barely heard her. My mind was elsewhere, on Daniel, on Emily, on the boy I used to rock to sleep whispering lullabies that promised safety. Around midnight, my phone buzzed again. A voicemail from Daniel. His voice was panicked, ragged. "Mom, I think Emily's leaving. She said the police called her about the loan. She's blaming me for everything. Please, I need your help. I don't know what to do." I sat in the dark listening, my fingers trembling. He had built his life on lies, and now those lies were closing in. I wanted to rush to him. I wanted to fix it like I always did. But the voice of Father Jenkins echoed in my mind. Sometimes, God lets us lose what we love most so we can see what we've become without it. I whispered to the empty room, "Let him see." Outside, the wind howled. The chimes sang their hollow tune. And then, faintly, headlights swept across my window. A car pulled into my driveway. Daniel's. He stepped out, pacing, looking frantic. Then he came up the steps and started banging on the door. "Mom, please, let me in." I froze. My hand hovered over the doorknob, heart hammering. But before I could move, another car screeched into the driveway behind his. Emily got out, her face twisted, her voice sharp as broken glass. "Give me the papers, Daniel. You think you can ruin me?" They were shouting, right there on my porch. Then Daniel turned, and for a split second, our eyes met through the window. His face was wet with tears. "Mom," he mouthed. "Help me." And that's when the blue lights flashed across the street. Police. I didn't call them. But someone had. The sirens painted the night in blue and white. Daniel froze when the police car stopped in front of the porch. Emily's voice cracked into panic as 2 officers stepped out. One of them, a tall woman with sharp eyes, spoke calmly, her flashlight cutting through the dark. "Daniel Walker?" He turned slowly. "Yeah. You're under investigation for loan fraud and forgery. We need you to come with us for questioning." Emily's face went pale. "He didn't do anything. It was a misunderstanding." The officer held up a hand. "Ma'am, we'll need you to stay back." I stood inside, behind the window curtain, invisible but present. My heart felt like a small shaking bird trying to escape its own cage. I wanted to open the door. I wanted to stop it. But something deep inside whispered, "Let truth do its work." Daniel's voice broke. "Mom, please. Tell them you don't want to press charges." I stayed silent. He didn't realize the charges weren't from me, they were from the bank. Justice had found its own path. As they cuffed him, Emily's face twisted with fury, and she screamed at him, "You said your mother wouldn't talk. You said you handled it." I didn't. But his words vanished under the slamming car door. The sirens faded into the distance, leaving behind only the smell of exhaust and the heavy weight of everything that had just collapsed. I stood at the window long after the cars disappeared, until dawn began to wash the night clean. My reflection looked older, but lighter too, like grief had burned away something poisonous. The next morning, the phone rang again. It was Rachel, my lawyer. They booked him for questioning. He might be released on bail, but the case is solid. You should prepare yourself, it could get messy if it goes to court. I nodded, though she couldn't see me. "Messy," I repeated softly. "It's been messy for years." When I hung up, the house felt too quiet again. The silence wasn't empty, it was waiting. I made coffee and sat by the window, staring at the wooden cross. I thought about forgiveness. The Bible said 70 times 7, but no one ever talked about how much it hurt to forgive when the wounds were still bleeding. By afternoon, I got another call, from Father Jenkins. "I heard about Daniel," he said gently. "Do you want me to come by?" "Yes," I said. "Please." When he arrived, I was sitting at the table with the loan papers spread out. He glanced at them and sighed. Sometimes, Truth doesn't set us free right away. Sometimes it just exposes the chains. I looked up at him. Father, he's my son. How do I let him suffer? You don't have to let him suffer, he said. But you have to let him face it. There's a difference. I nodded slowly. That night, I went for a walk to the park where Daniel used to play as a boy. The swing set creaked in the wind, the metal cold and silent. I sat on the bench, watching the lights of the town flicker in the distance. A woman passed by, pushing a stroller. She smiled politely. I smiled back, but my chest tightened. Once upon a time, that had been me, young, hopeful, believing love could fix anything. Now I knew love could also destroy you if you didn't learn when to stop giving. The next day, Rachel called again. Mary, something new just came in. She sounded tense. What is it? There's another account tied to your name, a savings account opened 6 years ago. Large deposits. Withdrawals every month. I think Daniel's been using your information for a long time. My hand gripped the phone so hard it hurt. How much money? Almost $40,000 over the years. I closed my eyes. 40,000. That was my retirement. That was the part-time job I'd worked after my knees started failing. He's been stealing from me, I said quietly. Rachel's tone softened. You can still press full charges, Mary. Fraud, identity theft, financial abuse. You'd win easily. But my voice came out calm, steady. No, not yet. After we hung up, I sat in silence again. But this time, my mind wasn't empty, it was working. If Daniel was willing to betray me to save himself, what else had Emily done? She was the puppeteer, the whisperer, the one who'd turned his guilt into arrogance. That night, I drove to Emily's workplace, a real estate office downtown. I waited in the car until the lights turned off. Then she came out, walking fast, her phone pressed to her ear. I rolled down my window just enough to hear. I told him to take the blame, she was saying. It'll clear my name. He'll do it, he's weak. A pause. Then she laughed softly. Once he's out, he won't have anything left. And then I'll file for divorce. I'll get the rest of the money. My breath caught. She wasn't just cruel. She was calculating every step. I followed her car from a distance as she drove across town and stopped at a small apartment complex. She got out, and a man opened the door for her. He kissed her before they went inside. I sat there in my car, the pieces of my life rearranging themselves into something horrifyingly clear. Daniel wasn't the only one who'd betrayed me, he was just the easiest to break. Emily had built the whole illusion. And now she was setting him up to take the fall alone. I drove home, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I didn't feel hatred anymore. Just resolve. If justice was coming, it would come cleanly, but I would make sure truth had witnesses this time. The next morning, I visited Rachel again. I want to add something to the case, I said. I have evidence Emily orchestrated all of it. I heard her last night. I know where she is. Rachel hesitated. Mary, that's dangerous. You can't just. I'm not doing anything illegal. I'm doing what mothers have always done. Protecting their children, even from themselves. We arranged to meet with the bank's investigator the next day. Rachel suggested recording my testimony, attaching the new evidence. But as I left her office, I noticed something strange, a white car parked across the street. Same car that had followed me from church last week. Coincidence, maybe. But I wrote down the license plate just in case. That night, I received another call, from the county jail. Mrs. Walker, your son has listed you as his emergency contact. My throat tightened. Is he okay? He's fine. He asked if you could come visit tomorrow morning. I hesitated. Then I said yes. When I saw him the next day, behind the glass partition, he looked smaller. Not like the man who'd raised his hand to me, but the boy who used to build blanket forts and call me his hero. His eyes were red, his voice hoarse. Mom, I didn't know what she was doing, he whispered. She told me it was just paperwork, that we'd fix it later. But she was lying to both of us. I swallowed hard. She's already gone, isn't she? He nodded. Took the money and disappeared last night. I closed my eyes, breathing deeply. The pain was still there, but something new bloomed beside it. Clarity. Daniel, I said softly, do you remember the summer you told me you wanted to be a good man like your father? He nodded slowly. Then start now. Tell the truth. All of it. He looked down, tears falling onto his cuffed hands. I'm sorry, Mom. I don't deserve your forgiveness. No, I said gently. But you can still earn it. When I left the jail, the morning sun was sharp and clear, burning away the fog. For the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. But peace didn't last. That evening when I got home, I found my front door slightly open. My chest tightened. I stepped inside cautiously. The air smelled faintly of perfume, Emily's perfume. The living room was a mess. Drawers open, papers scattered, photo frames smashed. And on the kitchen table, there was a single note written in her handwriting. You should have stayed out of it, Mary. Now you'll pay for what you did to us. Beneath the note was the small wooden cross Father Jenkins had given me, broken clean in half. The candle beside it had burned down to nothing. And from somewhere outside through the night air, I heard the faint crunch of gravel, footsteps approaching the porch again. The footsteps stopped just outside the door. For a moment, the only sound was the wind brushing against the chimes, their hollow notes trembling in rhythm with my pulse. I didn't breathe. I just waited, half expecting the door to burst open. Then came the knock. Slow. Deliberate. I whispered a prayer under my breath and reached for the phone in my pocket, ready to dial 911. Mary, a voice called softly. It's Father Jenkins. Relief rushed through me so fast my knees almost gave out. I opened the door. He stood there in his long coat, his face pale in the porch light. Are you all right? I stepped aside to let him in. She was here, I said, voice shaking. Emily. She broke in. Left a note. He frowned, picking up the crumpled paper from the table. You should call the police. I will, I said. But there's something I need to do first. He looked at me, eyebrows raised. Mary. I'm not seeking revenge, Father. I just want the truth to breathe where everyone can see it. He nodded slowly, understanding. We sat together at the kitchen table while I told him everything, about the bank, the forged signatures, Daniel's arrest, and the new evidence of Emily's betrayal. When I finished, his eyes were wet. It's time to bring it all into the light, he said. No more shadows. The next morning, Rachel arranged a meeting with the district attorney to discuss Daniel's testimony. If he cooperated, his sentence could be reduced. The DA wanted a full statement implicating Emily. It was the only way to clear my name completely and protect what was left of Daniel's future. That afternoon, I went to the courthouse. The air inside smelled like dust and old wood, like a place where truth waited to be dragged out, kicking and screaming. I found Rachel in the hallway, pacing with her phone. She's here, she whispered. Emily. Rachel nodded toward the end of the corridor. Emily stood by the water fountain, hair sleek, sunglasses perched high, as if she were attending a movie premiere instead of a fraud hearing. She saw me and smirked. I walked past her without stopping, but she leaned close as I passed and murmured, I told you to stay out of it, Mary. You never learn. I didn't reply. Her voice was just noise now, a ghost of its old power. Inside the courtroom, Daniel sat at the defense table in a wrinkled shirt, pale and exhausted. When our eyes met, something inside me broke and healed all at once. He looked like my son again, small, scared human. The judge called for quiet. The proceedings began. The prosecutor outlined the evidence: forged signatures, falsified loan documents, financial transfers to an account under Emily's maiden name. Every word hit like a hammer, shaping the room with truth. When Emily took the stand, her mask began to crack. The prosecutor's questions were sharp, methodical. Mrs. Walker, can you explain why the deposits from the fraudulent loan were transferred into your personal account? I didn't know, she stammered. Daniel handled all the paperwork. Is that why you told a third party on the phone that you'd let him take the blame? Her eyes widened. What? The recording played. Her voice filled the courtroom, clear as glass. Once he's out, he won't have anything left. Then I'll file for divorce. A ripple moved through the crowd. Emily's face drained of color. That's taken out of context. The judge banged the gavel for silence. From my seat, I saw Daniel bury his face in his hands. When it was his turn to speak, his voice shook but didn't falter. I forged my mother's signature because I was desperate. Emily said it was temporary, that we'd fix it later. But I know that's not an excuse. She didn't force me. I made my choice. And I'll live with it. The room went silent. I closed my eyes, tears slipping free. That was the boy I raised, the one who finally found the courage to tell the truth. The judge ordered recess, pending formal review. As we stepped into the hallway, reporters swarmed, cameras flashing. Emily tried to push through, shouting, "He's lying. They're framing me." I turned toward her. My voice was calm, almost gentle. "You built your life on lies, Emily. They were always going to collapse. I just stopped holding up the roof." She glared at me, trembling with fury. "You think this is over? You ruined us." "No," I said softly. "You ruined yourself." Rachel guided me away, whispering, "Let's go before this turns into a circus." But I stopped halfway down the stairs when I noticed something strange, a man near the exit, filming everything. The same white car from before was parked outside. "Rachel," I said quietly, "someone's been following me. I think Emily hired him." She frowned. "Are you sure?" "Positive." We approached the man, but he turned quickly and disappeared through the doors. Rachel reported it to security, but he was gone before they could stop him. When I got home later that evening, exhaustion hit like a wave. I turned on the porch light, half expecting another note, another intrusion. But this time, the house was still. Peaceful. I poured myself tea and sat by the window, staring at the candle and the broken cross still lying on the table. I hadn't thrown it away. Somehow it felt symbolic, faith fractured but not lost. Just as I lifted the cup, headlights flared outside again. My stomach clenched. Then came a knock. I opened the door cautiously, and there she was. Emily. Her eyes were wild, mascara streaked down her cheeks. She pushed past me, slamming the door shut behind her. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" she screamed. "They froze my accounts. My car. My name is in the papers." I stood still. "You did that to yourself." She stepped closer, shaking. "You think you're holy? That God's on your side? You ruined me because you couldn't let your son go." I met her gaze. "No, Emily. I saved him by letting him face what you wouldn't." Something shifted in her expression, something darker. "He's all I had left," she hissed. "And you took him too." She reached into her purse, and my blood ran cold. "Emily, stop." Her hand came out holding a small silver object, keys. She threw them onto the floor. "Your son left these with me. The car. The house. Everything you cared about, he gave it all away to me once. Guess that didn't last long." She laughed, a sound that cracked like glass. "You'll die alone, Mary. Just like your husband." For a moment, the old rage flared in me, the kind I'd buried for years under guilt and forgiveness. But it didn't consume me this time. It steadied me. I stepped forward, my voice low and calm. "Get out of my house." She sneered. "Or what? You'll pray me away?" "No," I said. "But I'll let the truth finish what it started." At that moment, flashing lights filled the room again, police cars pulling into the driveway. Emily spun toward the window, shocked. "Someone must have tipped them off," I said quietly. "Maybe God listens after all." The officers entered, commanding her to put her hands up. She resisted, shouting curses as they led her outside. When the door finally closed and silence returned, I sank to my knees. I wasn't crying from relief. I was crying because even victory felt like loss. Later that night, I got a call from the county jail. A different voice this time, an officer. "Mrs. Walker, your son's been released under conditional bail. He's asking if he can see you." I hesitated, looking at the flickering candle on my table. "Yes," I whispered. "Tell him to come home." It was nearly midnight when Daniel arrived. He stood in the doorway, his eyes red, his face thin. "Mom," he said softly. I don't deserve this chance. You don't, I said. But you'll make it count. We talked for hours, about his father, his mistakes, his shame. He promised to rebuild, to repay every dollar, to start again clean. For the first time in years, I believed him. But as dawn approached, a faint buzzing sound came from the porch. Daniel frowned and stepped outside to check. Seconds later I heard him shout, "Mom." I ran to the door. On the porch, the white car sat idling again. The same one that had followed me before. The driver's window rolled down. And inside, half in shadow, a familiar voice called out, "Mrs. Walker. I think we should talk." It wasn't Emily. It was a man in a suit, the real estate agent from weeks ago. Only this time, he wasn't holding a clipboard. He was holding a black envelope. Inside it was a single document, one that bore my name again. But this time, the signature was real. And above it, the words, "Power of Attorney, executed by Mary Walker." My blood ran cold. Because I had never signed it. The man held out the black envelope as if it were a loaded weapon. My hands trembled when I took it. Daniel stood behind me, tense, jaw tight, watching every move. "Who sent you?" I asked. He smiled thinly. "Let's just say your son's situation got someone else's attention. That document was filed this morning. It grants me authority to finalize the sale of your property." "That's impossible," I said. "That's a forgery." "Not this time," he replied. "This one was notarized. With your signature, Mrs. Walker." My heart pounded. "I didn't sign anything." "Then someone did it for you," he said, his tone almost casual. "And it's already in the system. By tomorrow, this house belongs to the bank." Daniel stepped forward. "You're lying." The man shrugged. "Believe what you want. Paperwork doesn't care about belief." He handed me a card with a phone number. "If you want to contest it, get a good lawyer, fast." Then he turned and walked back to the car. The engine roared, headlights cut through the darkness, and he was gone. For a moment, neither of us moved. The silence pressed down until Daniel finally whispered, "Mom, we'll fix this. I swear." I looked at him. "You said that before." "I mean it this time." "I know," I said quietly. "But meaning isn't enough anymore." I took the envelope inside and placed it beside the broken cross. My reflection stared back from the window, tired eyes, bruised spirit, but not defeated. Not yet. The next morning, Rachel met us at her office. She looked exhausted, coffee in hand, files spread across the desk. "The document's real," she said. "Filed electronically using verified credentials. Whoever did this had access to your driver's license, social security number, and notarization records." Daniel rubbed his temples. "That has to be Emily. She must have planned this before she got arrested." Rachel nodded. "It's possible. But she couldn't have done it from jail. Someone else is helping her. Someone with connections." I felt the air shift, one more betrayal layered on top of a mountain of them. "What happens if we can't stop it?" I asked. "They'll repossess the house in 72 hours. I nodded slowly. "Then we don't have much time." Daniel leaned forward, determination cutting through his shame. "Tell me what to do." Rachel smiled faintly. "We start by finding who processed the signature. If we can prove tampering, we can void the transfer before it's finalized." The hours blurred into phone calls, documents, and courthouse visits. Each person we spoke to passed us along like a burden they didn't want to hold. By the second day, fatigue weighed on us both. At sunset, Daniel pulled over by the river and said, "I don't get it, Mom. How do you stay calm through all this?" I looked at the rippling water, gold under the dying light. "Because anger already took too much from me. I'm not giving it the rest." He nodded, eyes glassy. "You shouldn't have to fight this alone." "I'm not alone," I said softly. "You're here now. That's enough." We sat in silence, the sound of the current filling the space between us. That night, I dreamed of Mark again. He stood by the old kitchen table, smiling the way he used to after a long day. "You always were stronger than both of us," he said. "Now finish it." I woke with a start. The clock read 4:13 a.m. My heart raced, but with clarity this time, not fear. I turned on the lamp, grabbed the folder of bank documents, and started reading. Line by line, signature by signature, until something caught my eye. The notary's name, Kevin Stiles. I remembered it instantly. The man in the gray suit, the same one who had come to my door weeks earlier pretending to be from Crescent Realty. He wasn't just a messenger. He was part of it. When Rachel arrived that morning, I told her. Her eyes widened. Mary, if that's true, this changes everything. That means the whole thing was premeditated fraud. She made a few calls, then looked up, her face pale. Kevin Stiles isn't on Crescent Realty's payroll. He's a freelance notary who's been under investigation for falsifying property documents. Can we prove he did mine? She nodded. If we can get him to talk. Daniel clenched his fists. Then let's go find him. We tracked him to a small office near the industrial park, an unmarked building with a flickering sign. When we arrived, the door was unlocked. Papers covered every surface, and a printer hummed quietly in the corner. Kevin sat at his desk, startled when he saw us. Mrs. Walker, he said, too quickly. I was just about to call you. Save it, I said. You forged my name. You worked with Emily. He raised his hands. I didn't have a choice. She paid me to process the papers, said it was temporary. I didn't know she'd disappear. You knew exactly what you were doing, Daniel snapped. Kevin's eyes darted to the door. Look, I can make this right. I can void the submission, just don't involve the police. Rachel's voice cut through, cold and sharp. You'll do it officially, and you'll sign a statement. He hesitated. I took a step forward, meeting his gaze. You hurt a mother who had nothing left to lose. Believe me, you don't want to find out what that kind of woman will do next. He swallowed hard, then nodded. I'll fix it. He did. Within hours, the fraudulent power of attorney was withdrawn, and the original deed reinstated. My house, my last piece of the life Mark and I built, was safe. That evening, I stood on the porch with Daniel as the sun sank behind the trees. The wind carried the scent of rain, soft and clean. You did it, Mom, he said quietly. No, I said. We did it. You faced the truth. That's what changed everything. He looked at me, guilt still lingering in his eyes. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me. I touched his cheek gently. Forgiveness isn't something you earn, Daniel. It's something you grow into. Just keep walking toward it. We stood there for a long time, the chimes whispering above us, their song softer now, less haunted. Weeks passed. Emily was formally charged with fraud and identity theft. Her trial date was set, and though part of me dreaded it, another part felt free. I attended each hearing quietly, sitting in the back row, watching her crumble under the weight of her own lies. She never looked at me again. Daniel began rebuilding his life. Therapy, work, small steps toward redemption. He came by every Sunday, just like he used to. Sometimes we didn't talk much, we just existed in the same quiet space, learning how to breathe again. One evening, as he helped me fix the porch light, he said, You know what's strange? I don't hate her anymore. I smiled faintly. That's how you know you're healing. He looked at me. Do you hate me? I shook my head. No. I mourned you. That's not the same thing. He nodded, eyes wet. Then maybe I can start being your son again. You never stopped, I whispered. You just lost your way. That night, after he left, I sat by the window again, the candle flickering beside the mended cross. I'd glued it back together days earlier. The crack still showed, but it stood upright again, imperfect and whole at once. I thought about everything that had happened. The slaps, the lies, the silence, the fire of truth that burned through every falsehood until only ashes remained. People say revenge feels sweet. It doesn't. Justice isn't sweet either. It's quiet, heavy, sacred. When you lose everything and still choose forgiveness, you don't rise above the pain, you walk through it. And somewhere along that walk, you stop being the victim and start being free. Before I blew out the candle, I whispered into the quiet, Thank you for breaking me, Daniel. Because now I know how to rebuild. The flame danced once, then went out. Outside, the wind carried the sound of the chimes again, steady, peaceful, alive. And I realized that some stories don't end with vengeance. They end with truth finding its voice. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you loved, listen carefully. Forgiveness doesn't mean letting them back in. It means finally walking out yourself, without looking back.